What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cozy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby, and we're going to be talking about the Thursday Night Football Broncos at Saints. This game right now is 37 over/under, and the Broncos, as Cam had mentioned to me earlier, have flipped to the favorites from prior. Do you know what the prior number was?
So it was 1.5 in favor of New Orleans, or one. I'm sorry, total. I looked Monday morning, and it was New Orleans -1, and then it flipped to Denver -1.5. I don't know why they would have been the favorite anyway.
Right.
Knowing the Derek Carr situation, that's usually what has the biggest jump and flip. But yeah, Denver is now favored, and it should be hopefully a sneaky fun game. Obviously, on paper, it doesn't bring nearly the appeal that we saw with Tampa, Atlanta, and then last week with San Fran, Seattle. Even though it was a 2-score game, it was a very,
Right.
very fun, entertaining game. This week, backup quarterback, rookie quarterback, very unexciting weapons. Obviously, New Orleans is really banged up, especially at the skill position. Denver, just much to be desired and very inconsistent. You don't know where it's coming from, and we're going to get into all that because some of these guys is just like, we're really going to attack them. And it's just like, we have to, and it's going to work out. Trust us.
Pricing is also pretty easy, which, I mean, not like where you make 1,000 lines type of easy. It's just like you can kind of get the guys you want, and then you can get the mid-range kickers, defenses.
So knowing what we
things
know,
like that too.
Obviously there's a bunch of Q tags, and Derek Carr's doubtful.
Yeah,
Carr's not going to play.
Let me pull
Chris
it up.
Olave was concussed on Sunday. He will not pass protocol by Thursday. I can promise you that. So. Rashid Shaheed, they're saying, his knee injury could be out a while. If you say the term a while, you're not going to be playing on Thursday.
Right.
But at the same time, we've had a couple reports, like just as an example, last week, Michael Pittman was, could be an IR candidate, and he played and caught the game-winning touchdown. So it's just like sometimes you got to take these with a grain of salt, but being a short week, a lot of these, it's hard to predict one of these having a shocking being available. The only one that I think there's a legit chance for is maybe Taysom Hill, and we'll get into all the players and stuff like that that are viable on this slate. Basically, everybody is on the board that has played. Obviously, with, like I mentioned, Rashid Shaheed, Olave being out, Bub Means led the team in targets this past week. Juwan Johnson's a thing. And then a couple of others that kind of stepped up. Mason Tipton.
Yeah,
a bunch
random
of names that we never have heard from before, and we're going to be interested in all of them, and it's going to sound gross, but sometimes the gross slates are the ones that you win. I kind of compare it now that if we predict Olave and Shaheed are out, being Kamara, Sutton being 11-8, 10-8, this reminds me very similarly to the New England Jets slate, which we ended up taking down even though we weren't confident, because it's just two guys up top, two under 10,000 quarterbacks, and then are you going to essentially go all four up top and then two just, really cheap,
real cheap,
or are you going to be more balanced? And that's just kind of the thing that we're going to have to decide later on when we build lines.
Yeah. Starting off, though, I'm going to look at the away team here in the Broncos, and we'll throw in Bo Nix at the captain spot, some of his pass catchers. If you wanted to, the running backs do catch a lot of passes, but we're not going to necessarily talk about them first. We'll talk about Vele, we'll talk about Franklin, Little Jordan, and Marvin Mims. That doesn't include their tight end. Where is Dulcich?
Dulcich has been a healthy scratch. He's not even the
Troutman.
The guy. The most recent game, just as an example, Lucas Kroll led the team in snaps with 60%. Very who is that kind of name.
Right.
Adam Troutman has always been a good run blocker and two tight end set guy. So he always gets snaps. He's basically been above 30% the entire season. And then Nate Atkins had 15 snaps as well at the tight end spot. But one thing to note is Josh Reynolds went to IR.
Yes.
He had a heavy dosage of snaps, especially early in the season, kind of dwindled to about 50% of the time. But that was keeping Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims off the floor. Well, now Josh Reynolds didn't play last week. Troy Franklin bumped all the way to 65%. Marvin Mims bumped up to a season-high 31%. And Devon Vele returned. Week 1, about 50% of the snaps, kind of where Josh Reynolds had been the previous 2 weeks. But second on the team in targets with 8. Last week, led the team in targets, 62% of the snaps, which was third on the team. So that's why it kind of really gets gross down here. But basically everybody's on the board because there's just a complete unknown.
Yeah, Vele up on the board here. You can see that, if you get 11 points out of a 4,400 guy, you're really happy. He's consistently gotten that. He's finally got his price bumped. He was $200 first week and then $1,000 this last week. But yeah, he's definitely in the player pool. One of our favorite plays of the day. Troy Franklin, like you said, had way more snaps, only got the 3 targets, dropped the touchdown that would have put him over the top. Bo Nix had an interview about that. I don't know if you got to see it or not, but basically Bo Nix was like, if I bring that ball back a yard and this stuff and that, well, he should have caught it. He absolutely should have caught it.
But that's what you want to hear, not Aaron Rodgers throwing another game-losing pick and saying Mike Evans ran the wrong route, so it's his fault.
Yeah,
and then 2 hours later,
didn't run the red line.
2 hours later, he trades for his former bestie, Devontae Adams, which we knew all along. We were talking about that. But that's a story for another day. But yeah, it's pretty wide open. One thing I did want to note, if you did click on we can talk about.
Go ahead,
Bo Nix, if you want to click on his game log, he's had some sneaky good fantasy scores the last 2 weeks, both over 21 points. 3 of his last 4 have been above 19. And so I don't know if this is a double quarterback fade kind of slate, because obviously this isn't a game that you would anticipate having a ton of just shootout, unless it's a random kind of game that we saw with the Saints and the Bucks this past week, where New Orleans scored 27 in the second quarter and we're shut out the other 3, and then Tampa Bay scored 50. If it's one of those games, cool, but I think I'm more confident in a Bo Nix. I mean, you look at his rushing upside. He's basically had 5 attempts each of his last 4 games, 61 rushing yards this past week, and then he had a rushing touchdown the week before, and then also in week 3. So he does provide the rushing upside in those regards. And then the 2 tough games that he had in the sample size that you see below, Jets, Pittsburgh, don't really blame you as a rookie quarterback with the receiving weapons you have to be having a subpar game.
The Jets game was also the worst weather we probably had the whole year.
Weather game, and we didn't see a lick of it in RotoGrinders.
Yeah, and pre-game.
We had an angry letter going out. It was crazy.
Cortland Sutton, we have to talk about him. He is the most expensive most expensive player on the Broncos this week. He's had a couple good games this year, but is it worth paying up to almost $11,000 to get him is the real question.
I mean, I brought up earlier how this reminds me of the Jets and the Patriots game, where it's just like, this is Ramondre Stevenson coming off of a couple good games, and then it's a negative game script that we know that they're going to be handled, and I just don't know if I want to spend up for him. Lo and behold, we were on different sides of that, but it ended up working out on my end. It's not like I was confident in it, but it ended up working out. Sutton is kind of more of the same. We know he's the obvious wide receiver 1. He gets the most snaps. But, I mean, you look at the targets, and, he's got multiple games with less than 7. He's had a couple with over 9 and 11. But also, New Orleans secondary hasn't really been truly the problem as much. Obviously, it was with Chris Godwin going off this past week, but Mike Evans was held in check. And that was the, once again, I brought up in the main slate, I was kind of nervous investing in a Mike Evans and his narrative 100 touchdown against Marshawn Lattimore. He did fine, but it was the Godwin show. So 10-8, really, really tough to get to, unless this is truly a low 13-10 game. You just want the raw points, and if he gets you 12 and he could still be in the optimal.
Yeah, you could be happy with that for sure.
Sure, but I mean, obviously, if we're talking about just spinning up for one of the 2, I think there's an obvious answer on who us and even everybody else is really going to go with. So maybe he's the tournament play that could be way less owned for a guy that's 10-8.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely think he will be under-owned versus the other high-price player in Alvin Kamara. Let's check out the running back position. There are 3. We are lucky to have 3 that we can kind of talk about. I wish there were more touches, touches per snap for Audric Estime have been awesome. Don't get me wrong. He had two snaps, 2 touches, but that's not necessarily helpful. You need him to do a little bit more than that. But he is $400, so it's reasonable to think he could be a solid play. He is averaging over 6 yards a carry. I'm rotating a lot today. I don't know what's going on here.
So again, this is kind of it's an ugly slate. But if you are doing hey, I'm just going to spend it for both quarterbacks, the top options, and then I don't want to have an average of $2,000 per person to figure it out. Well, going all the way down to somebody like Estime, he's only projected 1.92 points, but that is the second highest value on the slate according to RotoWire. Adam Trotman, who we mentioned at 600, is the highest value.
Right.
And so spinning down for one of those guys is a reasonable way to go if you wanted to go with that kind of build. I don't know if it's necessary this week because of all the injuries up top.
Yeah.
But it's worth mentioning. I think over time he's going to get more and more ramped up. That was actually his first game truly being active and back after being on IR. So, and again, New Orleans gave up over 300 yards to running backs this past week. Obviously, Sean Tucker may have been the lowest owned millionaire maker person I've ever seen before at 0.04% owned. Obviously, Dusty would be pleased to see the performance that he had. 190 yards all purpose, and I thought we had a share or two of him as just a 20th round flyer. And I didn't see any ownership on mine, so I was kind of sad about that.
Why didn't you tell me we were picking the wrong Buccaneers running back this week, man? Like, if you would have told me that would have been awesome.
I mean, Bucky hit 17 plus, and I was like, I'm feeling great. But, I mean, both of them just went off, and obviously that was
the game
to the side of Baker also having 4 touchdowns and nearly 300
Chris Godwin going crazy. Yeah,
Chris Godwin going crazy for Drew. He's just been incredible. It's fun to watch him play and be healthy again, knock on wood. But
yeah, for sure.
Anyway, so New Orleans just recently, 4 straight loss, gave up a 50-burger to Tampa Bay. And it's just like, if I'm going to invest in one side or the other on offense, it's uncomfortable, but it's the Denver side. And if we're talking about the run game, Javonte Williams, very inconsistent with his usage, and you see his fantasy score. He hasn't scored a touchdown this year. It's been frustrating. Last week, they were playing from behind. He also lost another fumble. But, I mean, 2 straight games with 6 targets. In terms of snap share, 63% in week 5 to 37% for Jaleel McLaughlin. And it went even bigger of a gap this past week with 67% to Javonte, which is really good in today's age as an RB1, and then 25%, which was, I believe, a season low for Jaleel. So very big gap in terms of snaps. Opportunity-wise, we want to see a little bit more of that as well.
Yes.
But at some point it's kind of coming, and it might be this week.
It's a perfect situation with how the Saints played last week against Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, who have never had games like this. Young guys, of course, but still they are backups to Rachaad White. We'll see if they're still backups when he comes back, though. Talking about Jaleel McLaughlin, he is the guy that has poached a couple of touchdowns from Javonte Williams on the goal line, and then also is a pass-catching back in the last 2 games, both of them, between the 2 of them, getting 9 total targets per game. That's pretty solid for running back work if it's only one of them, but that's on the other side of the game.
Right. Yeah, he's just kind of never came into his own with the fantasy community hype he had, which we kind of, at the very end, kind of bought in a little bit too, just to have as a handcuff. But it wasn't that we were like, oh, we're less confident in Javonte, we're going to go ahead and go with Jaleel. That doesn't mean that we've been right on Javonte. We've been absolutely wrong so far, but that could always turn around. But also, we got a ton of Audric Estime. If both of them suck, we'll just ride with the former Notre Dame back that is a rookie, which rookie running backs in a terrible class because of opportunities are killing it. If you saw Monday Night Football, Ray Davis for 100+ yards all purpose and killing it. So it's just all about opportunities. And if they're not making the most of it, Audric will probably be a big value late in the season. But enough about Denver. Don't love talking. That's the longest we're ever going to talk about Denver's offense the entire year. But going to New Orleans side, it's obvious up top.
Whoa.
You know what we're talking about. It's Alvin Kamara at 11-8. He's been incredible this year once again. He is banged up, but he's going to play. I don't have any concerns with that. But I think each of the last 2 weeks, at least 8 targets. Tampa Bay is actually a really good run defense, especially when Vita Vea is healthy and stuff like that. So very inefficient back-to-back weeks with 3.1 and 2.4 yards a carry. But guess what? He gets 8 targets. He scores 1 time, and so his worst game has been 12.6 fantasy points. And so there's a reason that he's this expensive. Nobody's really competing with him for touches. I will note that Kendre Miller is back from IR as well. He's another guy, but also his coach hates him.
He does.
And so I don't know how big of a deal that'll be, especially on a short week, eating into any kind of production. I expect if there's anything, it'll be something similar to what Audric had last week, which is just 2 snaps and 2 touches, and just be like, see what you got.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I'm not spending $2,000 for him. I can tell you that much. And then Javonte, just kind of more of the same. He gets kind of breather back for a series or 2, and he just really doesn't do anything. I don't know why he's 3,600, but he is,
Yeah,
and
I
we're not
agree.
playing him.
We'll not be playing him.
So
yeah, I can get away. Basically, the only running back we want is Alvin Kamara. That's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to explain why he's going to get all the touches.
So with this game, obviously Spencer Rattler is starting his second. He was our puke stack of the week, and obviously very strong start. Kind of ended with the dud, but 14 points for minimum $4,000 quarterback we will take every single day. That's what we said. The bar was 12.
Went great.
He got to 14. So was very happy. The only thing was the other rookie, Mr. Drake May, was the guy of the true puke, being with the 3 touchdown game in his debut. So with that being said, the story in this game is essentially the pass catchers, because obviously Chris Olave, first series of the game, it broke our heart, but a helmet-to-helmet hit knocked him out with a concussion. Rashid Shaheed actually still played 80% of the snaps, but knee injury, trending the wrong direction to even play. And so we look at next man up mentality. Who was the next guy? Well, it was Bub Means. Bub Means led the team outside of Rashid Shaheed with 50 snaps, which was 71%. Next up, Cedric Wilson being 51%, which was a season high, and Mason Tipton, who each of the last 2 weeks had about 35 to 40%, kind of had right around the same. So on top of those increased snap shares, well, now there's even more to go to that, because Rashid Shaheed will not be playing. At least when we're building lines, we're not going to be building it thinking that he's going to play.
Right.
Juwan Johnson, a couple of back-to-back strong games in terms of production. Obviously he had 3 targets, but he caught all 3 for 48 yards, and then 5 for 31 as a very cheap guy. I don't know if he was in the optimal line against Kansas City, but he really worked out. If you paid 2,200, you got 8 points from him. So it's a tight end slate where things happen. 68 is a tough price to pay, though. And then Taysom Hill, he's been dealing with a cracked rib injury. It is a short week, but it sounded like he was really close this past week to play. He wasn't ruled out until, I believe, Saturday.
Yeah, he was close.
If I remember correctly. Yeah. So he was a limited participant through the Tuesday walkthrough, so that's always a good sign.
He was a limited participant yesterday also, and on Monday also, which was good.
He's a perfect kind of showdown kind of guy.
Yeah.
And even though it's 7,000, that is a little tough to spend up to, but there's so much value down low that doubling up on some of those guys and getting to him, I'm completely fine doing that if we're doing about a 3 max, which we've been doing over the last few weeks.
Yeah, that's pretty much everybody for the Saints player wise. We're gonna have to talk about kickers and defenses. The kicker side for the Saints, if you look at it, I mean, maybe if it just would load. I believe in you. If you look at this, they've had good weeks, obviously, early in the year, and then 9. I think 9 is very viable on this slate for a 5,200 defense. So if they can repeat that, and that was in a game where they lost by 51.
Yeah, that was that
kick
return touchdown, or punt return touchdown rather, from Rashid.
Yeah, saved them. But yeah, so getting them, I think that's interesting. Blake Groupie, he's a guy that could be interesting. And this year, kickers have kind of been pretty important.
They've been smashing on showdowns, especially.
Oh yeah,
but I mean, you can get 8 to 10
all day long.
10 last week. Will Lutz revenge game, maybe little narrative action for him. You're 5,400. Obviously, kickers are just going up and up, but I mean, he's actually been pretty steady. A couple of games over 13 points. Essentially, he's either kicked a bunch of field goals or he just hasn't kicked any at all.
Right.
So, completely viable. Again, it's hard to predict kickers, but usually one of them kicks a couple field goals and then they'll work out for you. But if they kick 3, they're getting closer and closer to optimal. And so in a slate like this, those or the defense or even one of both is completely reasonable and viable on this slate. Denver has been very sneaky good defensively. Last week, gave up 23 points, which is completely fine. Nothing to sneeze at, but no turnovers. 3 sacks, though. 4 straight games with at least 3 sacks. Had a defensive score against the Las Vegas Raiders, but then had 3 straight games of north of 10 points. And then against Pittsburgh, held them to 13. Reasonable 6 points. I mean, they're completely in play, especially against a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last week it worked out if you were on the Buccaneers side in this same sort of matchup. Let's talk about game script. I want to hear what your expected game script is, and then we'll go to all our other must-plays, fades, and contrarian plays.
Right. So right now I have this game. I just kind of felt like it was a touchdown game. It sounds like you have something similar. I actually had it 24-17 just because of the way that New Orleans has been trending, and that the fact that Denver scored 34 against the Raiders, showing that they're capable of scoring 2-3 touchdowns. They're kind of getting, even though it's an uncomfortable, not a go-to guy yet, they're being able to move the ball now. So 3 touchdowns after a team just gave up, 7 this past week? Completely reasonable to assume. 24-17 is what I said. It's a depressing game, but I hope it's a fun game. Because non-conference doesn't mean really anything for me, the team. New Orleans is reeling with 4 straight losses. Denver, competitive, very, very competitive, just like we said they would be. 3-3 is even better than what we thought. But being 4-3 after 7 weeks with this roster would be an incredible feat. So just kind of hoping for another fun game, really. But it's definitely a game of a ton of no names to most football fans.
Yeah, for sure. Denver, for me, I had Denver winning 17-10. I think this hits the under. Just kind of talking about some of the guys, like we've talked about, obviously, Shaheed and Olave. But they actually have, New Orleans has 4 guys on Q tags right now: Kamara, Olave, Shaheed, and Taysom Hill. Also, Derek Carr being out and Spencer Rattler being the starter, that just kind of makes it even harder for me to believe in this offense. And then the worst part about it all is this O-line has been just decimated with injuries.
Right.
Like overall, I mean, Eric McCoy's not playing, but they've had every single player almost, I feel like, has had something except for Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning is the only one that has come out unscathed since the beginning of the year. So the O-line being decimated is tough. And then Denver, looks young but super solid, and that they're exciting because of that youngness and stuff. They have a ton of guys that they're just bringing along. Defensively, they're young. Offensively, they're young, but they are just playing their butts off. And I think it's a night for kickers and defense.
Yeah, I mean, even doing, like I said, doing a lineup with 1 kicker, 1 defense, double kicker, double defense, like I think it's all on the table in this game. And yeah, 24-17 is fine and reasonable, but it's not like I feel great about them scoring more points. It's just kind of how these two teams are trending. But I mean, if it's like a 24-10 or just essentially, again, I keep going back to the Jets and Patriots showdown a couple weeks ago, but if it just kind of is a 24-3 game, well, defense is going to be viable, kicker is going to be viable, and it's just like get the raw points, guys, and then you'll do well. So don't know how that's going to go, but it's a fun slate, and I'm sure we can build some. Who is your biggest lock of the game? I know it's a obvious one with Alvin Kamara being one of mine.
Yeah. For you, you got to do the sheet first. Alvin Kamara would have been on the locks list for sure for me also.
Almost think that was a cop-out, to be honest.
Yeah, that's why I had to go somewhere else. I actually put 2 because I was like, hey, why not? Okay. Bo Nix is going to be a lock because of the fact that he has the rushing upside. He has run multiple times. I mean, shoot, he had 6+ rushes in every game, I think, which is, just something you have to get a little bit of when you get a quarterback. Almost 6+. He had 4 in the first game and 3 when the games they lose, he doesn't run. So when he's running, and I think they're going to win, let's get a rushing touchdown out of Bo Nix and be happy. And then my other one is the Denver defense. They have been sneaky good. And as I said, offensive line is decimated. You have Spencer Rattler back there. He's mentally not there yet, and I think they can get back there to him. Patrick Surtain is one of the best corners in football, but Riley Moss on the other side has one of the highest, has a top 5 PFF grade. They have good edge rushers. Like Denver's defense is one of my locks also.
Sweet. Yeah, I mean, and that'll kind of correlate with some fun builds. So, and then do you have a fade that I'm not going to get to at all?
Jaleel McLaughlin. I know that there's 2 names on here. I'll let you do yours also, but Jaleel McLaughlin, because of the fact that he is just trending down on his snaps. Aldrick Estime's back. I expect him to get more snaps. I think that cuts into Jaleel more so than Javonte. And so I'm kind of off of Jaleel this week.
So I think there's actually a ton of fades.
I agree.
Because of pricing on this slate in general. I'm going to say Courtland Sutton, and I know that sounds like another cop-out, but basically I'm just emphasizing I'm not doing the build of just get the top 4 and then figure it out. Fair. I'm not going to do a single one of those builds. Every single thing is going to be pretty balanced, and I'm just going to grab Kamara in all 3, and then we're going to figure it out from there. But I agree with the Bo Nix call. Denver, Will Lutz, him. I can see the narrative for both, but Denver probably is a little bit safer. They're cheaper, and on top of that, might be even less popular.
Yes. And then for contrarian plays, I wanted to hear your contrarian plays. I know we've talked about some of these guys already,
So
but
I'm actually very interested after kind of thinking about it and seeing how the prop lines are tripping or trending. We'll talk about at the very end, but Devon Vele was somebody that stuck out to me when I first did this at butt crack of dawn this morning at 4,400, just because his 2-game sample size, 14 targets, 7 a game. First game back, and he was second on the team in third on the team in snaps. But I mean, even putting Troy Franklin, just because he's getting more and more run now, and then obviously we've talked about him and Bo Nix having history together, and obviously he had a touchdown last week, like you said, almost had a second one. So him being only 3,000, both of those guys, I don't know if either of them will be considered chalky. I think they'll probably split ownership, but it'll probably be roughly around 25, 27%. And I'm completely fine doing that in these kinds of builds.
In a 3 max, would you want, like, how would you want to put them?
I would probably want to do, in an ideal world, probably 2 of each, but 1 line with both of them together.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. Absolutely. My contrarian play is Taysom Hill, 7,000. But if he does come back and he is healthy, how often do we see him play quarterback? And you have a young quarterback right now. It's the perfect opportunity to allow Taysom to get some reps, running the ball, throwing the ball, doing those things, because of the fact that, he is the change of pace for Derek Carr, who we already have more comfortability with in New Orleans. But now for a rookie or for a young quarterback in Spencer Rattler that he will also take the place of. So I think Taysom Hill makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. He's the perfect showdown type of play. And obviously he has rushing upside, he has receiving upside, and maybe even some passing off upside in short, small yardage packages. Right. So he's just kind of the Swiss Army knife, obviously, that we've known and loved for the last few years. And, it's not like you have any other confident play outside of Kamara. And people are going to try to talk you into Bub Means because he led the team in targets and he's only 4,000. Well, they're also against the top scoring secondary against wide receivers in football right now.
Right.
So it could all just be every receiver's under 30 yards. And guess what? The only 2 relevant fantasy players are going to be Taysom Hill, Alvin Kamara.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I would love to see your first look.
Yeah. So my first look is going to be kind of, I don't know how chalky it is, but I think it's a build that a lot of people might follow. So very easy captain. He's going to be by far the most popular captain, Alvin Kamara. Biggest raw upside,
right?
Biggest floor,
for sure.
All that in a bag of chips, and he's the most expensive. He's going to be the highest owned captain. Don't want to go overweight to him at captain, but I think this is a very safe line, so that's kind of how I'm building it.
Yeah,
we're going to throw in Bo Nix and Javonte Williams. Javonte again, 6 targets in 2 straight games. You saw what Sean Tucker and
Bucky,
thank you. Bucky Irving did against New Orleans on Sunday. Javonte Williams, obviously he's getting the snaps. He's not getting the touches yet. This could be the perfect matchup, perfect storm of when they come. So I want him in this build.
Okay.
I'm also going to put Devon Vele and all the way at 44. And then I'm going to put Bub Means as well.
Okay.
And then I'm going to top it off, and you can afford either. Initially I had Will Lutz, but you kind of convinced me, so I'm going to put Denver defense, give a little bit more salary relief, and about 900 remainder. Perfectly fine build. We're doing raw point kind of build.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically all 6 of these I could see being the top scoring plays on the slate. So that's why I wanted to build this line. Very, very safe, but being 900, maybe it's not even as chalky as I think it might be.
I mean, it's not that far away from mine, and I've actually seen this line. I did make this line earlier. It makes a lot of sense. Just kind of the core way of thinking about it is like, if Alvin Kamara is the only guy that scores here, he's going to get the targets. I think that he makes a lot of sense. If he rushing touchdown, you don't get the points for Spencer Rattler, and then you just attack Denver with their best plays on the slate. I completely get it. I did not have the same build because I will show you, actually. It's very close. Very close. I did not play Javonte, and I did not play Bub, but everything else is the same. So we're 4 out of 6 the same way. Taysom Hill went in my line. He is my contrarian play of the week. That left me with $6,700, and I actually left $1,300. $1,300 on the table to go all the way down to Will Lutz. And
Okay.
oh yeah, I went Will Lutz and Broncos. You almost went with Will Lutz instead of the Broncos. So yeah, it's the same type of build for Denver's. And then
the biggest thing I can emphasize on the slate like this is don't be afraid to leave salary on the table.
No.
I mean, you already see the salary that's left now, but even to get even more different, because there's a big world, because each of the last 2 games, Kamara held to 12 and 17 points, whereas Bo Nix scored north of 21 in both.
Right.
Flip him the captain because he's got rushing upside, and that puts over 2,000 remainder. And I bet you he'll be the second or third highest owned captain if I had to guess. But 2,500 remainder, and it's the same 6. I'm fine with it. If you wanted to get even crazier, talking about my other line that I had instead of the Will Lutz and Taysom Hill picks, if you wanted to have a tournament captain and put Javonte at captain, then that's like about over maybe 3,000 remainder. It's the same 6 that I still feel good about being some of the 6 of the 7 highest scoring plays on the entire slate from a raw points perspective. And you have a ton of salary. Nobody's going to play that line.
Yeah.
And I just feel good about it.
Who was the last one, Bub?
Yeah, Bub Means.
Okay, so you have 2,400 left over. Okay. Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you can write the story, and that's the big thing. Like in this case, you actually have a better, better correlated because it's like, okay, you have the running back with the defense. They always correlate really well. You're playing ahead. Vele scores a touchdown. Why not? Javonte is 65% of the snaps like he's been, and he's actually efficient, which would be great. And they're in a good game script at that point is what you're also writing is like he's going to get 15 rushing touches because of the game script. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Right. And if it weren't for so many players being out and injured, I might even flirt with doing 20 max, which is what we've tried to do the last couple. But I don't even think you need to. I think we're just going to get comfortable with a couple lines because it sounds like we're pretty lockstep, other than maybe you have it a little bit lower scoring, but that doesn't mean that I'm less confident in a defense.
Right.
Or a Will Lutz or something like that.
I didn't play both defenses in either of my starting lines. I mean, we could. One of my lines, and I will put it up there because we saw yours. My captain was actually the Broncos defense. I think that if they're viable to get 12 points, 13 points, I think, they're fine at cap because they are so cheap as long as you don't think that Bub Means decides to go for 8 targets again. And then I added Kamara. I added Bo. I definitely had Taysom Hill again. Like I said, I was doing that, and I believe I went Javonte. I can look it up. I have it on my phone. And then I went, So I went Javonte and
the kicker.
My kicker. Where are you, Will?
Yeah, Will with 1 L.
Yes.
So I like the build as well. The biggest thing is I just think there's a really easy way to just get different in a lot of ways. And again, leave salary on the table. We just showed you examples where there's 2,500, 3,000 remainder, and you're not going to see that very often on showdown slates. But when you get the opportunity to do so, and it's not that risky, because putting a Bo Nix over Kamara is not entirely risky,
right?
But it's way, way different, and you're less duped. And it could be the only one playing that line outside of us because we're going to be playing it.
Yep. Absolutely.
The only thing I guess I do have a question of is there even a possibility that we're going to do a double quarterback line?
Yeah, let's do
it. Before we do go, because I know if we did a mid-tier captain again, doing something like a Spencer and Bo Nix, way cheap receiver for New Orleans, a Devon Vele, a Troy Franklin, maybe we could make that work. The only thing is we probably won't get. Let's see what we can find. So. Yeah,
I mean, you could do that. That's pretty easy. It's
really easy.
I mean, that's one thing about this slate is like you can just we're probably going to be wrong on the captain, and I want to like kind of emphasize that with the price of Kamara at 11.8, most people are going to go if they go captain with him, it's going to be really hard to fit certain things you want. So in my opinion, it might be better to go find a middle ground captain because I think this week is the perfect week for that. I think that's the perfect week that if I clear this because I know Bub Means becomes the captain, Vele becomes the captain of the week, Will Lutz becomes the captain of the week. One of these defenses, groupie, because of the fact that if they score 12, 13 points, and I have a pretty low scoring, obviously, but if they do that emphasizes just how much more you need them. And a cap, you could then just shove in all
I
the
think
raw
with
points.
Alvin, he's the obvious play it captain, the first.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see Courtland Sutton's ownership because of the value. Maybe it is inflated. I don't know actually how they're going to attack him. But I'm fine fading him the way we are just because of the lack of consistency in terms of wide receiver one expectation
Right.
compared to what he's working with. But I think Kamara will be north of 85% total owned, and captain wise, he's going to be about 28 to 30%, which is massive for a showdown slate. So
Right.
if you are doing a 3-max like we will be doing, only do one Kamara line, because I promise you, every other captain is going to be so much lower owned that you're way over the field to him, and it's going to make you feel even better because Kamara, you'll probably just cover, the average. You can play 100% of them, be slightly overweight there, maybe slightly overweight at captain. But the real difference you're getting is the Bo Nix captain or the cheap receiver captain,
for sure.
Which is really going to go along with even Javonte, which I love the spot. I just can't just put $100 on. Oh, he's gonna just easily hit
finally
X,
it's
Y,
this
and
week.
Z.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But I mean, a Mason Tipton.
I was trying to shove in, the big
Cedric
four,
Wilson,
but it's pretty difficult.
It's really tough
man.
after that, and that's what I mentioned earlier when you're talking to Adam Trotman or Estime. That's kind of the easiest way to fit the big four, and then also one of them being an expensive captain, and then you have about 4,000 left to go to any receiver that you want, essentially.
Yeah, because it's pretty rough to try to get all of them in there, and then but I think it will be. I think a lot of people will try it. I mean,
I
think
definitely think they will
happen
I don't know
lot.
if it's really viable or worth it because, like you said, it being a low-scoring game,
you're going to miss
people
out.
are going to try to go high and way low.
Yeah,
that they're going to miss out on the 4,000 to 5,000. Which, if Denver's under 20% owned, that is such a steal as a defense. We'll probably be playing at least 2 of 3 lines with them. Will Lutz, kickers have been pretty viable, so I think the ownership will reflect that, maybe 25-ish.
Fair enough.
But at the same time, that's going to be over the field just with one, and we might play 2 lines because I really like the line you built earlier with both the defense and the kicker. So things like that is kind of what I'm thinking about. It's pretty straightforward. Again, the more and more we talk about it, at least live on this episode, it makes me feel even better about the slate, despite it not looking like it should be.
Feeling gross. It just feels gross. It doesn't. It's not actually gross. It will be probably a fun game to watch just because of the fact that I don't think it's going to be high scoring fun. I think there's going to be turnovers. I think there's going to be big moments, not necessarily touchdown moments, but other kinds of moments, sacks and stuff like that people will enjoy to watch. But next up, we're going to do the props of the week. Cam, is your prop of the week on Underdog or on Prize Picks?
I actually don't remember how high it went. I think they're both at they've gone up since we picked them this morning.
Yes.
Both of them have gone in the direction we wanted them to go, or didn't want them to go, rather, after a few hours. But my first one initially this morning was Devon Bailey at 29.5 receiving yard, is all the way up to 33, I believe, on both sides. I just think with 14 targets, it's hard to imagine, especially with Chris Godwin being a wide receiver too, how he doesn't hit that line. But what I was mentioning earlier, because there's a discount tonight with Alvin Kamara, if you see, essentially, if you clicked on the demon for Devon Bailey, stay there.
You're right.
Nope,
no. It's not that.
The arrows.
I'm tripping. Sorry, guys.
So if you look at the arrow, it adds about 2x to a 3 pick, just going up 6 more yards.
Yes.
So at this point, because they haven't adjusted the demon yet, I think it's just kind of worth it to go that high. And I'm not entirely confident. You can only play $25 with the discount anyways. But I mean, I just think it's worth it at that point to go that high. Basically, the demon's reflecting what the old line was, which is 29. Still like it. There's only 2 Denver receivers with props right now, so keep an eye on Troy Franklin. There's no New Orleans Saint receiver props because
none.
Still no official word on Olave or Rashid Shaheed, so keep an eye on those. Honestly, you can probably bet a pretty reasonable 6 pick on this whole just Thursday night showdown slate, because I think all the lines will pretty much be reduced in the way that they should be, and it's not going to be that hard to go over on many of them.
Well, I do like this pick. Like we said, if you're in our Discord, you would have gotten that pick at 29.5. We did put it in there. My pick was also bet in the direction that I had it going. It was at 113.5 for Alvin Kamara to go for rushing and receiving yards. I was taking the under. It is basically at that point it was pretty easy to say that was a solid under based on just the odds in general. But if you look at this 3 pick here, and I'll put it in here in a second, but you're going to get 7x on it because of that demon. It makes a lot of sense. Alvin Kamara going against the Denver defense. I said it's going to be a low-scoring game. I've been harping on the fact that this is more of a defensive game. I don't think he goes over this. I think that he is viable as a player on a DFS slate for sure, 100%. But this is a number that I think he's probably staying under.
Yeah, I mean, each of his last 2 games, he hasn't come close. I believe he's under 70 in both games. But yeah, he's still averaging in those games 15 fantasy points, which is why we are willing to play them on a slate where there's just not a ton of raw upside from scoring. Obviously, you see, which, just for the record, don't always look at those because PrizePicks isn't obligated to just give you the accurate number. I've seen that people get mistaken from like false numbers or stuff like that. So always keep an eye on that, especially NBA, because NBA is very volatile every night playing or something of that nature. But yeah, again, at least you can tell we're betting in the right direction on the props that we pick. Obviously, we're not ever always going to catch them so early that we can give them to you. And then also because of the injuries, there's not a ton to choose from right now.
Right.
Another one worth mentioning is Javonte Williams, either 46 rushing yards or 68.5 all-purpose yards.
Right.
Just because of what we saw with Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving. But again, he
had 6 rushes last week.
He hit that in the previous 2, and then obviously had a fumble playing from behind. Struggled last week. But it's one, I think it's a get right spot. And if Denver is favored, they're playing from ahead. It's a good game script for him to hit just 47 rushing yards.
For sure. But yeah, also we'll say that this video is recorded before it comes out. So if these numbers have changed, that's why you need to be in the Discord, because that's how you catch them on time. Otherwise, if you miss out on them, I'm sorry. I hope you get in the Discord next time. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. We really do. This game is going to be one of the worst games on paper that we've seen on a Thursday Night Football, but it's hopefully going to be, like Cam said, a lot of fun. Hopefully there's a lot of big plays and a lot of things. So yeah, we appreciate you. Obviously, we're going to have a lot more fireworks next week with Minnesota and the Rams as the Thursday night game. And then following that, the Houston and the Jets game will be the following week. So we got good games on tap. Hopefully this is a sneaky fun game. Right.
But again, we feel pretty good about the lines that we built. I don't know how different we'll get from the first looks that we showed. But again, don't be afraid to leave salary on the table. Don't be afraid to play money on slates that don't have a lot of name value, because those are sometimes the slates that take down. For the 5th time, the Jets and Patriots game, we were not confident in our slate, but we posted our lines, and I was top 5.
Yep.
And 10,000 people
last
playing.
Week.
So
last week we had a buddy of ours take down for the San Francisco
I was
slate
at halftime.
Oh yeah, but you had Jordan Mason.
But I had Jordan Mason, and he faded Jordan Mason, and he went from barely cashing at halftime to first place.
Yeah.
And he had a buddy that tailed him for the first time playing, and both of them won 4 figures, and it was pretty cool. Gave us a nice shout out to them, because they've been great supporters to us thus far, and it's really fun building with them. Obviously, that was a FanDuel slate, but again, it's a lot of the same principles when you think about slates like these. So, but yeah, we're excited for it. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Be on the lookout for our main slate that we post up later this week, and then we're gonna have some props videos coming up. The college football super dogs have been absolutely killer for GTD. We just did a review of this past week and what's to come for this. Another exciting, especially in Austin.
Yes.
College game day is coming. We might make an appearance, try to get on TV. We'll see.
But
yeah,
cool.
Tell them we can't appreciate y'all enough, but we'll have y'all have a good one.
Yeah, y'all have a good day or good night or whenever you're watching this. Bye, y'all.